the Middle East, a region that has been the cradle of civilization, the birthplace of major religions, and the center of countless historical events. A region steeped in history, marked by conflict. From the ancient empires of Mesopotamia to the modern-day struggles, this land has seen it all. In 2036, this volatile landscape erupted once more. The echoes of past conflicts reverberated through the present, igniting new flames of war. The Egyptian-Israeli war, a protracted and brutal conflict, began. It was a war that would test the limits of human endurance and the resilience of nations. It would last 12 long years, 12 years of relentless fighting, shifting front lines, and countless lives lost. This war, unlike those before it, would reshape the geopolitical reality of the Middle East. Borders were redrawn, alliances were tested, and the balance of power was forever altered. It drew in regional powers and had global implications. Nations from around the world watched closely, some intervening, others providing support from afar. This is the story of that war. A war that was not just about territory, but about ideology, identity, and the future of a region. The war was rooted in old grievances and new anxieties. Historical wounds that had never fully healed were torn open once again. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict remained unresolved. This long-standing issue continued to fuel tensions and violence. The rise of new ideologies and ambitious leaders in the region heightened tensions. Leaders who sought to reshape the Middle East in their own image. The balance of power was shifting. Old alliances were breaking and new ones were forming, creating a complex web of relationships. By early 2036, the situation was a powder keg, primed to explode. The world watched with bated breath, knowing that the outcome of this conflict would have far-reaching consequences. March 2036, a month that would be etched into the annals of history. A border clash between Egyptian and Israeli forces in the Sinai Peninsula ignited the conflict. What seemed like a minor incident quickly turned into a full-blown confrontation. What began as a minor skirmish escalated rapidly. The initial exchange of fire soon drew in reinforcements from both sides, turning the border into a war zone. Both sides blamed the other, accusations flying across the airwaves and diplomatic channels. Politicians and diplomats scrambled to control the narrative, each side painting the other as the aggressor. Within days, the situation spiraled out of control. The conflict spread like wildfire, engulfing the region in chaos and uncertainty. Egypt, led by the ambitious General Mahmoud al-Sisi, launched a full-scale offensive. Al-Sisi, a figure known for his military prowess and nationalistic fervor, saw this as an opportunity to reclaim lost glory. Their target to reclaim the Sinai Peninsula, lost to Israel in previous wars. The strategic importance of the Sinai Peninsula made it a coveted prize for both nations. Israel, caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack, vowed a swift and decisive response. The Israeli Defense Forces mobilized rapidly, determined to defend their territory and push back the Egyptian advance. The die was cast. War had returned to the Middle East. The echoes of past conflicts reverberated through the region as both nations braced for a prolonged and bloody struggle. The initial Egyptian assault sent shockwaves through the region. Countries were forced to choose sides. Old loyalties were tested, new alliances forged in the fires of war. Libya, under the rule of the unpredictable General Khalifa Haftar, threw its support behind Egypt. Jordan, wary of Israeli expansionism, also aligned with the Egyptian cause. Israel, however, was not alone. They received crucial backing from the United States, their longtime ally. The conflict was no longer a localized affair. It was becoming a proxy war, a struggle for regional dominance.
General Haftar, in a bold and risky move, ordered Libyan forces to cross the Egyptian border. This decision was not made lightly, as it carried significant geopolitical risks and potential repercussions. The Libyan forces, well-trained and determined, moved swiftly across the desert terrain, their mission clear and their resolve unwavering. They were to engage Israeli troops directly, a move that would undoubtedly escalate the already tense situation. This direct intervention widened the conflict, pulling more countries into the fray. Algeria, sensing an opportunity to expand its influence and assert its power in the region, joined the war on the side of Egypt and Libya. The alliance between these nations was a strategic one, aimed at countering Israeli dominance and reshaping the balance of power in the Middle East. The regional conflict was becoming increasingly complex and dangerous. Narrator media, night vision footage of explosions in the Sinai Peninsula, soldiers fighting in the desert. The early years of the war saw fierce fighting across the Sinai Peninsula, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The desert landscape, harsh and unforgiving, became a battleground where strategies were tested and lives were lost. The conflict also spread to the Gaza Strip, where Egyptian forces, bolstered by Libyan troops, made significant gains. The urban warfare in Gaza was intense, with street-to-street fighting and constant skirmishes. The local population, caught in the crossfire, faced immense hardships and displacement. Israel, however, with its superior air power and advanced military technology, inflicted heavy losses on the opposing forces. The Israeli Air Force conducted relentless aerial bombardments, targeting key military installations and supply lines. Their technological edge gave them a significant advantage, allowing them to strike with precision and devastating effect. The conflict reached a turning point in 2038. The intensity of the battles, the shifting alliances, and the relentless pursuit of strategic objectives by all parties involved made this year a pivotal moment in the war. The decisions made and the actions taken during this period would shape the future of the region for years to come.
Section 5, Stalemate and Shifting Tides, 2039 to 2040. The Libyan intervention tipped the balance of power, but only temporarily. The war settled into a bloody stalemate. Neither side could achieve a decisive victory. Battles raged on, each one a brutal and costly affair. The years 2039 and 2040 were a period of grueling attrition. The human cost of the war was mounting. Millions were displaced. Economies were shattered. The international community called for a ceasefire, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. The conflict had taken on a life of its own. Section 6, the Algerian Offensive, a turning point in 2041. By 2041, a sense of war weariness had settled upon both sides. The conflict seemed destined to grind on indefinitely. However, a surprise offensive by Algerian forces in the south changed everything.
Algerian troops, highly trained and well-equipped, launched a lightning strike into southern Israel. They captured key strategic points, threatening to cut off Israeli supply lines.
The offensive caught Israel completely off guard. It forced them to divert resources from other fronts, giving Egypt and its allies a much-needed advantage. Section 7. The war drags on, 2042 to 2043. Despite the Algerian success, the war was far from over. Israel, though weakened, was still a formidable opponent. They launched a series of counteroffensives, determined to regain lost ground.
The years 2042 and 2043 saw some of the fiercest fighting of the entire war. Cities were reduced to rubble, casualties soared. The conflict, once a regional affair, was now a global concern. The world watched in horror as the Middle East tore itself apart.
Section 8. International Pressure and Internal Strife, 2044 to 2047. As the war entered its second decade, international pressure to end the bloodshed intensified. Sanctions were imposed on all sides. Diplomatic efforts gained urgency, yet on the ground the fighting continued.
Within the warring nations, however, cracks began to appear. The human and economic toll of the conflict fueled dissent and unrest. People, weary of war, yearned for peace. The seeds of change were being sown.
Section 9. The Final Push and the Collapse, 2048. By 2048, the tide had turned decisively against Israel. The Algerian offensive had fundamentally altered the strategic equation. The Israeli military, once considered invincible, was now stretched thin and demoralized.
Egypt and its allies, sensing victory, launched a final massive offensive. They broke through Israeli lines on multiple fronts, advancing deep into Israeli territory. Faced with overwhelming odds and crumbling support at home, the Israeli government finally agreed to unconditional peace talks.
Section 10. A new Middle East, the aftermath and the future. The Egyptian-Israeli war ended in August 2048 with a decisive victory for Egypt and its allies. The war's conclusion brought about a new political order in the Middle East. Old borders were redrawn, new alliances were formed.
The war's legacy, however, is mixed. While it brought an end to the decades-long Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it also left scars that may take generations to heal. The Middle East emerged from the conflict a changed region, forever marked by the violence and upheaval of the Egyptian-Israeli war.